tutorials, um, manuals, and if you serve food, no, during the training, then you have to take those into account as well. Site assistance. One of the things that your franchisee relies on you for is site assistance. Meaning that if they present a site to you for approval, you're supposed to evaluate it and say if it's going to be a good location based on your experience. Or if you have a database of locations, then you also incur expenses in keeping that database. No? So when you do site evaluation, you're supposed to study that site. No? You observe traffic patterns, foot patterns. What is the traffic driver? No? Is it a store? Is it a church? Is it a school? Is it near a school? Is it in a mall? No, what's the traffic patterns? And when you do site evaluation, usually you observe on weekdays and weekends, no, to determine is it more of a weekend market, is it a weekend mall, or is it a weekday mall? So imagine if the site that you're evaluating is outside Metro Manila, no? For example, it's in Cagayan de Oro. So you need to factor into your expenses the cost of plane fare, no? And of course, when you get there, you don't get off the plane, do your site evaluation, and then go back on the next flight, no? So if you're there, you might as well learn more about the place, you know, talk to some of the people there, talk to some of the references of your franchise applicant, no? So you need to factor that in as well. You will be assisting your franchisee in the startup phase, no? If they don't have any background in business, so you need to assist them get permits, licenses, clearances. There's also general and administrative expenses of your accounting staff. If you have legal fees, no, filing fees, then that has to be factored in. And an X factor, no, which I will explain in the next slide. So basically, you need to determine all your costs and add that up. So in this particular example, it costs me 180,000 pesos each time I have a new franchisee. So I should not charge a franchise fee any lower than that. So imagine if I didn't go through this exercise and I just charge a franchise fee of 150,000, each time I sell a franchise, I'm actually losing money. No? So you need to go through this exercise for franchise fee determination. One of the factors was what we call an X factor, and it's really nothing more than just a graph with royalty income on one side and support costs on the other. So what this shows is that when the franchisee opens, their support that they need is very high. So you need to be there, you have to have a pre-opening team. You might have to visit them more frequently because they're not very familiar with the business, and they'll call you much more often. No? They'll ask questions about operating the POS, questions about credit card transactions, and so on and so forth. But as soon as they become more familiar over time, then the support they need is less, and your support costs are lower. Conversely, it could be expected that their sales are low at the start, no? Since they're just starting up the business, they need to build up their customer base. So your royalty income is also low at the start. No? Over time, when they build up their customer base, they have regulars who keep coming back, their sales get higher, and your royalty also increases. So there's a certain point in time where you are earning less in terms of royalty than what you're spending in support. So you need to factor in that difference and add that to franchise fee cost. Okay. So beyond this point wherein your earning more in royalties than your support cost, then you're okay na. So you'll be fine from this point onwards. Okay. One more point about franchise fees. No? Our approach to franchise fee is we would like the franchise fee, we recommend that the franchise fee to be more of what's called a cost recovery mechanism. Okay, so what does that mean? All that means is that determine what your costs are in terms of franchise fee and then try to price your franchise as close to that as possible. So don't charge a very high franchise fee. Okay? So why not? No? Why not make your money on franchise fees? If you look at the cash flow that will come to you as a franchisor for the next 10, 20 years, you will see that franchise fee is actually small compared to the money that you will make in royalties, in product supplies, and so on. No? So it doesn't make sense that you will put up a high barrier to entry for people to become franchisees by putting a high franchise fee when it's not your main source of revenue anyway. No? So it's like you're just shooting yourself in the foot. No? You're making it hard for people to be franchisees when franchise fee is not your main revenue anyway. No? So treat your franchise fee more as a cost recovery mechanism. Okay? Make sense? Okay, so still on the structure, franchise structure aspect, as I mentioned, the franchise fee covers all these expenses that you incur each time you have a new franchisee. Main source of revenue would come from royalties, which is a percentage of sales, and it's supposed to cover these other expenses that you incur. No? Each time you have a franchisee, you're supposed to visit their stores. You're supposed to give them support. No? Sometimes online, sometimes on-call support. They will consult with you when they have problems, when their sales are low and they need inputs on how to increase sales. So basically, when you're a franchisor, you become a business consultant to your franchisee. Developing new advertising programs, R&D, developing your business even further. No? If you come up with new technology to make costs lower, to make better decisions, you should research on those to make your franchisee more profitable or to sell more. And general and administrative. No? Actually, the other term for royalty is the continuing services fee instead of royalty. And I like that term better because it connotes that you have to render services to your franchisee continuously. In the past, when people sell franchises, they thought that it was enough that they use your name and that you train them at the start, and then you'll just wait for royalties every month. No? So the only time people will go there from the franchisor is when they will collect royalty. No? And many of those didn't do well, and many of the franchisees didn't want to pay royalties anymore because they're not getting anything in exchange for their royalty. No? So think of that more as a continuing services fee, okay, instead of something that you're entitled to. Okay, another major source would be sale of product. So especially what's called proprietary products. Proprietary products are those that are related to your brand or to your way of doing business or related to your recipes. So these products can only come from you because it involves a certain proprietary recipe or it has your brand name. No? For example, If it's a retail company, like with the fashion brands that we work with, you can only get planes and prints from the planes and prints company. You can't get it from the market. So this is a main source of revenue, no? And in fact, for those companies, they don't charge any royalty anymore, and they just sell the product since 100% of what's sold in the store comes from them. There's also products that are non-proprietary. No? And these are the general supplies and general ingredients that are used. No? For example, if it's a restaurant, it could be the vegetables, could be the supply of